Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast as we enter the month of September. And as far as the sports world goes, that means a whole lot of stuff is happening in the world of sports. We have new seasons right around the corner in hockey, in football, in basketball, and then we have soccer heating up, baseball heating up, a whole lot of stuff to talk about today. And as always, I'm Labi, and I'm joined by Jacob here to talk about them all. Jacob, how are you doing today?
It's good to be back. It's been a while since we've done this, but hey, we're back and we're ready to talk some sports.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of stuff to get into. I have a giant list of 10 talking points today, and hopefully we'll be able to cover everything that I have written down. But just in terms of, at least in my opinion, importance of wanting to talk about it, I think right off the top, Jacob, did you watch the Women's World Hockey Championships?
Yo, I'm not gonna lie, Philippe Poulin is probably the most clutch Canadian women hockey player I've ever watched in my life.
Absolutely. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, I don't even think it's a bold take anymore, but like Captain Canada is now Marie-Philippe Poulin on the hockey side. So, just a background for those of you who don't know. Um, the Women's World Hockey Championships took place over the last couple of weeks in Calgary, Alberta, and there were a lot of storylines around this. So basically, it's the first World Championships since 2019. Of course, COVID delaying what delaying the tournaments that were supposed to happen. And in the last tournament, so keep in mind that hockey is still on the women's side, pretty much single-handedly dominated by USA and Canada. They've finished first and second in every single World Championships and Olympics until 2019, where Finland knocked Canada out in the semifinals. Canada wins bronze, Finland wins silver, USA wins gold. Um, Also, Canada won 9 of the first 10 gold medals at this World Hockey Championships, and since then, the U.S. have won 9 out of the last 10 gold medals. So it's very much been a two-horse race, but not really. It's kind of been a one-horse race with each country, Canada dominating early and the U.S. dominating more recently, and with Canada coming off of a third-place finish, which is just inexcusable for them. There was a whole lot of redemption wanting to take place. No surprises happened. We got the Canada-USA gold medal match that everyone was anticipating, and wow, the game did not disappoint. It was a great hockey game. The U.S. jump out to a 2-0 lead early in the first period. 2 goals by Alex Carpenter. And I just want to say, Alex Carpenter reminded me so much of like the Patrick Hornquist role because she just went into the front of the net, into the paint, dirty areas of the play, and every rebound she got. And Canada couldn't move her out of the crease. That's how she scored her 2 goals, just in the front, cleaning up some rebounds, 2-0 USA. Canada comes out in the second period, play much better. They tie the game up 2-2. They get a nice power play goal from Jenner, and then they're able to tie it up a couple of minutes later, make it 2-2. The game then goes all the way into overtime. In the third period, the U.S. had, I think, 4 different power play opportunities that Canada had to kill off. It was absolutely crazy. Their power play was just not working. It goes to overtime, and it's 3-on-3 overtime. It was absolutely wild. And Jacob, talk us through Marie-Philippe Poulin's game winner.
Well, 3-on-3 overtime, first and foremost, was probably the greatest thing the NHL has done in the past decade. Um, and I'm not gonna even argue, maybe not even close. It is so much fun to watch. It's so much fun to look at, and it's so much fun to be a part of. So Canada comes up. It's a 2-on-1. Philippe Poulin gets a breakaway. She shoots it, and it hits a crossbar. Or wait, like Patrick Kane in 2010, she celebrates, and no one else around her celebrates. The game keeps going on, and then about, what was it, 30 seconds later, the horn blows, and that's when everyone knew that Team Canada had won the gold. It was a disgusting shot. Like, it was top shelf right in that corner, and it was not savable, and it was just it was Team Canada just being the better team, beating Team USA, and you couldn't write it any better. The captain of Team Canada coming back after being day to day and shooting it top shelf in overtime in the gold medal game to give Canada their first win in how long?
Yeah, first win since 2012, because like I said, the United States have been dominating women's hockey for the last couple of years, with the exception of the 2018 Olympics and now the World Championships this year. And this is a huge, precursor to the Winter Olympics, which I know sounds crazy because we just had the Tokyo Olympics, but the 2022 Winter Olympics are right around the corner, actually. And, especially in women's hockey, there are only really two major tournaments. It's the World Championships and the Olympics. We just finished the World Championships, and now we're going to get the Olympics less than a year from now. This is a huge precursor because these two teams, well, the game went to overtime. They were separated by one shot, and like you said, what a shot it was from Marie-Philippe Poulin. And yeah, I mean, you talk about how clutch of a player she is. She's now scored 3 gold medal winning goals in her career. She scored the gold medal winning goal at the 2010 Olympics. She scored the game tying goal and the game winning goal at the 2014 Olympics in what is still the greatest hockey game I've ever seen live, men's or women's. 2014 gold medal game between Canada and the USA. Absolutely ridiculous game. I highly recommend that anyone who hasn't seen it goes and watches it. I remember I convinced my teacher in civics class in grade 9 to put the game on the screen, and we were able to watch the last minute of the third period and overtime in class, and it was great. So she scores the game-tying goal and game-winning goal in that, and now she scores the game-winning goal in the 2021 World Championships. I mean, at this point, that's honestly something that I've never seen across like any sport. Like, there are very few athletes in a team sport that have scored 3 championship winning shots.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't happen. Like, even even Michael Jordan, like, I think only has 2 like championship clutch winning shots. And so, like, that's what I mean, the level of clutch that Marie-Philippe Poulin is. When the Canadian women need a huge goal, she's gonna be there to score it. That's why she has the C on her jersey.
You're absolutely right. That's why she has the C on her jersey, because she knows how to come in clutch. The C doesn't stand for captain, it stands for clutch. And boy, she's been that. Like you said, that 2014 when they were down by 2 goals and with like 5 minutes to go, and she helped tie the game and then score the overtime winner in overtime, and obviously in overtime. Um, to say that she's Canada's best hockey player, you can put her up here with Wickenheiser. She definitely deserves to be in that category of performances in clutch and in under pressure scenarios. So, it's good to see Canada back in the gold medal, in the gold medal. So, congrats to them.
Yeah, and then also funny moment too is Canada sallied so hard when the horn finally went off that one of their players, Blair Turnbull, hurt her leg in the celebration, and they took her out on a stretcher to get her gold medal, and she was laughing about how embarrassing it was. It's a great video clip. You can probably find it like on Twitter or something. It's absolutely hilarious. They like wheel her out onto the stretcher and she has her gold medal and just everyone's laughing. It's a great clip to watch. And yeah, there you go. Obviously they were so excited to finally win again, first time since 2012 at the World Championships, and clearly maybe a little too excited to win because she ended up hurting her leg. But I think she's all right. She'll be back in time for the Olympics. But I thought that was pretty funny too.
I
But
feel,
yeah, there's
I feel like it's not just because it's their first win since 2012. It's been a very frustrating 2 years for the Canadian women's hockey, and now coming out and finally winning in front of. There were some fans there. I would assume it was family, but there were
yeah,
fans there.
friends and family. I think was most of the crowd.
Yeah.
But yes, there were people. There were people there, and it wasn't just Canadian. Like I'm pretty sure friends and family from every team. So there were some American friends and family in the crowd, some Canadian friends and family in the crowd. It made for actually a pretty good crowd atmosphere, to be honest.
Yeah, like it was their first time since 2019 since they actually played, and now they're finally back, and it just felt good to be back.
Well, yeah, also because this tournament was originally supposed to be played in April, I think, in Halifax, and they canceled it. And this is another thing where it's like, well, support all kinds of sports. If you're a hockey fan, well, support the women's hockey as well. And thankfully, there was enough outrage from fans and from organizers and from people across so many different levels where they were like, you can't cancel the biggest women's hockey tournament without rescheduling it. Like, what? And there's enough backlash where they finally decided, okay, we'll reschedule it for August. And like, it's a great thing that they did because it was a phenomenal tournament. There were some great games, and obviously, from a selfish perspective from us, Canada gets to win. So the fact that they were considering just canceling this tournament and not replaying it is just like, that's absolutely crazy to me that this almost never even happened.
Yeah, it was frustrating for them for sure, but they finally got to play, and they showed the world why Canada and hockey deserve, are the best combination.
Yeah, keeping it now with international hockey before we get into some big news in the NHL, but keeping it on the Olympic hockey side, well, we still don't know if NHLers will be going to the Olympics, although according to recent reports between the NHL, the NHLPA, they're expected to make a decision quickly, and they are expecting NHLers to go and play. Um, and so, just a couple of notes about the Olympic hockey on the men's side. In the least shocking news of all time, Sidney Crosby and Nathan MacKinnon were seen pictured on Nathan MacKinnon's Instagram, filming their Tim Hortons commercials. Which, if you're Canadian, you know exactly what we're talking about. If you're not, and you haven't seen the Tim Hortons commercials with Sidney Crosby and Nathan MacKinnon, go watch them. But in the picture, they were both wearing Team Canada jerseys, and those appear to be the jerseys that they will be wearing for the Olympics. And in the least surprising news ever, Crosby's jersey had the C on it. I don't think anyone was questioning who the captain of Team Canada was going to be. It's Sidney Crosby until he retires, and then it's probably going to be passed on to Connor McDavid at some point in the next 5 years, I'd say. But I just did want to report that, if the NHLers do end up going to the Olympics, it does seem like Crosby will be the captain. Don't think that's shocking at all.
No, like obviously, and like you said, I think McDavid obviously will be the captain in the next few years. But for now, Crosby's still kicking it, still performing, point per game player, and and it looks like the Team Canada's gonna look deadly as always.
Yeah, and they did announce the groups because the final Olympic qualifiers took place over the last couple of weeks. So Slovakia, Denmark, and Latvia are the three teams that qualify for the Olympics in the final qualifiers, and they will join the rest of the teams that automatically qualified for this tournament. And so the groups on the men's side will be Canada, USA, Germany, and China in Group A. Russia, or the Russian Olympic, like ROC, because they're still technically banned from the Olympics, but ROC, Czech Republic, Switzerland, and Denmark are Group B, and then Finland, Sweden, Slovakia, and Latvia is going to be Group C. For those of you who are wondering, because we were just talking about the women's side, the women's qualifiers haven't taken place yet, so we only know Group A. Group A has the U.S., Canada, Finland, Russia, and Switzerland. Is the group there for the Olympics on the women's side. But on the men's side, we now know the group, and just a couple of points to talk about that's kind of funny. First of all, shout out Teddy Bluger, captain of Team Latvia. Just want to point out, when I say he's the Latvian Wayne Gretzky, I'm not kidding. Guy's got the C on his jersey, and he led Latvia through the Olympic qualifiers into the main group. Just saying, when they shockingly upset Sweden and Finland at the Olympics, don't act surprised. And the other thing, which I do want to get your thoughts on, is this what's going on now with the Chinese team. So obviously, China, because they're the host of the Olympics, automatically qualify for everything at the Olympics, so including the hockey team. And let's not sugarcoat it, China's hockey team is not great. But it's gotten to the point where the IIHF, so the International Ice Hockey Federation, and the Olympics, like the IOC, the Olympic chair or whatever, I actually don't know what the IOC stands for, but like the Olympic governing body, have told the Chinese hockey team, if you don't use the eligibility requirements to make your team stronger, we might kick you out of the tournament. So basically, with the eligibility requirements, you don't actually have to be Chinese. Like if you have dual citizenship, or if like your grandparents were Chinese or something like that, like you're eligible to play for China like that. A lot of smaller countries have started doing this. Like I know, for example, at the last Olympics, which were in Korea, half of the Korean team were Canadian and Americans who had dual Korean citizenship, and they decided to represent Korea so that they were able to field a competitive team. China hasn't done that. Their team is full of, Chinese nationals from China, like born and raised in China, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that if, your team is good enough. But there are reports from coaches and people that have worked with the Chinese team saying that the current China team, if NHLers go to the Olympics, would lose to Canada and the US by 100-0.
Yikes.
And this is coming from people who are working with the Chinese team. So there's no reason to not believe them. And there was one person who reported that Canada could play just Crosby and McDavid and no goalie and probably still win the game. And at this point, I don't know if they're exaggerating and it's actually that bad, but it does look as if this China team just isn't competitive with the rest of the countries at this group. And well, on one hand, it would be pretty funny to see like Canada and the US and Germany obliterate a team like 50, 60 plus nothing. That's also just not good for the sport. And so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that and what you think the solution might be.
Like you said, the solution is use like the dual citizenship part of it, because it's absolutely embarrassing if you don't even have a goalie in net and it's just McDavid or McKinnon and Crosby, and and they win what, like 100-0, or obviously the Chinese would score, but it's embarrassing, to say the least. That obviously we know China has to have a team, but you got to compete with teams like Canada and US and Germany and teams in Latvia, even with Bluger as the captain. Um, like I would put my money on them to do significantly better than China. And obviously it's not China's fault. They're not known for their hockey, but at the same time, like it's gonna be real embarrassing to watch if you have just an all Chinese team without anyone with like dual citizenship or something like that. So I'd like to see what China does, and I'd like to see if they're able to kind of you know not figure it out, but decide what they're gonna do and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I said, that the South Korea team from the last Olympics, they did the whole dual citizen strategy and using the eligibility requirements to build the strongest team that they could. And now, granted, NHLers weren't at the Olympics, so it's not an even comparison. The team was at least competitive. They didn't do really well. Actually, I'm curious to pull up how they did, but I don't recall them doing badly. Like they were certainly competitive, and obviously, if you add NHL players to the mix, it certainly complicates things. But you still want to just be able to field a competitive team. And South Korea lost all three of their games and were outscored 14-1.
Don't
So
get me wrong.
maybe
Don't
I
get
was
me
actually
wrong. When
wrong
they
about. Sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
When they scored that goal, like it was like chaos in the game. Don't get me wrong, it was fun to watch. I was like really rooting for South Korea, but you're right. Like these are like professional NHLers playing on these teams against them.
Yeah, so they lost 2-1 to Czech Republic, 8-0 to Switzerland, and 4-0 to Canada. And as I mentioned, this was a team that used the eligibility requirements to their advantage, and then they were still, unable to be competitive. Like I'm just going here, I'm looking at the roster, and to be fair to them, there was a large group of them who were actually from Korea, born in Korea. But then they also had starting goalie Matt Dalton from Clinton, Ontario, Canada, and Brian Young from Ennismore, Ontario, Canada, and Michael Swift from Peterborough, Ontario, Canada, and Mike Testuidi from Vail, Colorado, United States. So basically they were eligible to play because they have been playing hockey in Korea, or they had Korean heritage, and like they were basically eligible to represent Korea. And even with that mixed team of, I'd say, 60% Korean, born in Korea, and 40% Canadian and American supplements who were eligible to play, they still lost to non-NHL players from other countries, 0-3, 14 goals against, 1 goal scored. So you can imagine how much worse it could be for China, if they have to come up against Canada, USA with all the NHLers, just how much that could get out of hand. So I understand why, the Olympics are maybe trying to intervene well beforehand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, uh, like you said, I hope that they use that eligibility, because if not, it's going like you may never see China again in the Olympics for hockey, like ever.
Well, I mean, you probably won't ever, anyways, because they were saying if China wasn't the host and they had to qualify for this tournament like regularly, they'd enter at like the earliest stage of qualifying. And I was looking over the like qualifying route, and like they were entering at the stage where teams like Kyrgyzstan and Romania were winning. So you can imagine just how far down the rankings these countries are when it comes to hockey. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do on the big stage. But pivoting over now to the big story in the NHL, and that is flashing back to 2019. The Montreal Canadiens decided to offer sheet Sebastian Aho, and the Carolina Hurricanes matched it, and then everyone went on with their lives, acting like we would never hear about this news story again. Well, flash forward 2 years later, and the Carolina Hurricanes clearly have not forgot, because they've now decided to go back and offer sheet one of the Montreal Canadiens young players in Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and they've done it in a way that's clearly, you offer sheeted our guy, we're offer sheeting your guy, by offer sheeting him to a 1 year, $6.1 million and $15, which happens to be Kotkaniemi's number, with a $20 signing bonus, 20 happening to be Sebastian Aho's number. So it's clear why Carolina made this move. In the statement they released on Twitter, they did it in French, which is clearly poking a joke at the Montreal Canadiens. And then the statement that was released by the general manager was the exact statement that Marc Bergevin gave 2 years earlier about Aho. They just took the name Sebastian Aho out and replaced it with Jesperi Kotkaniemi. But the thing that's different about this is there's a legitimate argument that Montreal's not going to match this offer sheet. So, Jacob, what are your thoughts on Carolina deciding to do this, and what does Montreal do about this?
I feel like it's funny, but it's kind of childish. Like everyone knew that Aho wasn't going to sign with Montreal, and he wanted to stay in Carolina. And now that Kotkaniemi might not get an offer sheet match from the Canadians, I think they're going to lose a big part of the rebuild, or whatever they are right now, a big part of their team. And Bergevin's going to look like a dumbass, because not only had he lost out on Aho, but he's going to lose out on Kotkaniemi as well. And Kotkaniemi will probably get some playing time in the Hurricanes, and probably won't get scratched like he was a few times in Montreal. So honestly, um, I think that Kotkaniemi will be a Hurricane by the end of this, and Montreal fans are gonna be pissed off at Bergevin, because what doesn't karma, ever heard of karma? Karma comes back and bites you in the ass, and it looks like Bergevin's getting bitten pretty hard by the snake right now. So, it's more than likely that he signs with Carolina, especially because Carolina's future is a lot brighter than Montreal. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening to play, but I think that's what'll happen.
Yeah, well, obviously he's signed the offer to Carolina, so now it's Montreal's decision. They have a week to match, and now it just so happens that the week to match, I think, expires today, I believe it is. So by the time this episode comes out, we might already have the answer. Um, Look, I completely agree with you. I don't think Montreal is matching this. And there are positives and negatives to this, because so there are a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans like in my life, and I've talked to a bunch of them about their thoughts, and pretty much the thoughts that I've gotten from them is, look, the guy's not worth $6.1 million. And like you mentioned, he was a healthy scratch for a lot of their playoff games during their run to the finals. Um, in favor of Eric Stahl, who didn't particularly play very well in the playoffs. Um, so it's clear that for whatever reason, he's not valued. Not that he's not valued at the team, but clearly they were willing to field a team in the Stanley Cup Finals without him. Um, and then they asked Bergevin what his thoughts were coming into the season. Obviously, losing Philip Deneau, there's a huge gap at center that they need to fill. And people were basically asking, do you think Kotkaniemi can fill that role? And he essentially said no. Um, which, way to have faith in your guys. So I understand why Kotkaniemi would maybe feel like I want a new avenue, and I can also understand why the Montreal Canadiens might not be willing to commit $6.1 million to a guy that they didn't really use in their lineup. At the same time, though, and talking to Montreal Canadiens fans, their general consensus is, look, it would be nice to get a first and a third round pick because that's what the compensation would be in return for him. But at the same time, he's 20 years old and we drafted him third overall. To just let him walk to Carolina for a first and a first overall pick that, like, Carolina's a good team. It's not going to be a third overall pick. It kind of feels like a loss. But then, on one hand, the most rational take I thought I heard was you can't evaluate a player based on what you used to draft them. Like, when you look at Kotkaniemi, yes, he was a third overall pick, but you're not looking at him as the third overall pick. You're looking at him as the player that he is today, which is a third line center, right? So it is tough because at the end of the day, you are losing your third overall pick if he walks, but like I mentioned, you can't look at it that way. You have to look at it, he's our third line center. We're already over the cap right now as it is. Can we afford to pay him $6.1 million, especially when Suzuki's contract expires next season? And obviously he's much more valuable to the Montreal Canadiens than Kotkaniemi, given the role that he's been playing with the Montreal Canadiens. And Suzuki is what Montreal thinks their first line center is going to be moving forward. So I completely agree with you. I think that he is going to be a Carolina Hurricane next year, and I think that a lot of it has to do with the way Bergevin has handled the Aho offer sheet 2 years ago, but also how he's handled, the development and the game time of Jesperi Kotkaniemi.
Yeah, and you know what? It sucks. Kotkaniemi was going to be a big part of that team, and I remember everyone was so surprised when Kotkaniemi's picked over someone like Zadina, which I think was in the same draft. Um, and now Bergevin's going to look like an even bigger idiot. The only reason he'll be back next year as a general manager is because they went to the finals this year. And Kotkaniemi was a big part of that, and now they're going to lose a big part of that. And for Montreal fans, I'd be pissed because he, like you said, um, Bergevin was not very, very good with handling the way the whole situation had gone with Kotkaniemi. But good for Kotkaniemi. Probably go play with a team that actually cares about him and is actually going to want him there, and he's going to get some good time in Carolina, I think.
Well, yeah, he'll be their third line center. And the thing about this is obviously Carolina has the cap space to pay him $6.1 million. And the reason they're doing that is because, like, clearly it's an overpay. Everyone knows it. But they're doing it so that they can get the player because they need to offer a contract that Montreal can't match, right? And obviously, if they value Kotkaniemi, it's just a one-year deal at $6.1 million. And I'm sure they've had discussions with him about what his price would be long-term. So honestly, I think there's a very real chance that if Montreal doesn't match, you're looking at Kotkaniemi signing a long-term extension with Carolina. I'd say they'd go 5 or 6 years at like $4 million. Actually, I shout out to the Steve Dangle podcast. They were talking about this, and Steve Dangle said, honestly, why not sign him to the Nazem Kadri contract, which is 6 years, $4.5 million? because eventually the salary cap is going to go up again. And at the end of that deal, because once again, we're talking about a guy who's 20 years old. So if he signs a 6-year extension at 21 years old next season, you're talking about a guy who at 25, 26, 27 is only going to be making, what, $4.5 million. And he's got, sure, like, I don't think he's a lock to be a first line center or a second line center. He might just be a third line center his whole career, but he has upside potential. He has second line center or low first line center potential still, and he's only 20 years old. So I honestly, I mean, a lot of people are criticizing Carolina for saying, oh, you let Dougie Hamilton walk. You weren't willing to give Dougie Hamilton $9 million, but you're willing to give Kotkaniemi $6. And I don't think they should look at it that way. I still think Carolina's made questionable moves this offseason, trading Nedeljkovic for basically nothing, letting Dougie Hamilton walk. Completely agreed those are questionable moves, but I don't think this Kotkaniemi thing's a questionable move because I think they look at this as a 1-year overpay so that they can get him on their team, and then lock him down to a much more reasonable long-term contract.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there's not much more to be said on that because Montreal's going to once again screw up something that they had, and good for Carolina. It's a low risk, high reward. If he pans out, he pans out. If he doesn't, he doesn't. It's only a 1 year, $6 million. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, and like you said, at the end of the day, if Montreal matches, fair enough. We never had Kotkaniemi anyways, and by Montreal matching it, you've screwed over their cap situation a little bit more.
Yeah,
And
so a little fu to Bergevin.
exactly, and then honestly, I guess they're not. I mean, if you're a team in win now mode, you can't be too concerned about giving up a first and a third round pick. I mean, coming from a Penguins fan where we've literally traded our first round pick like it seems every single fucking year. Um, but yeah, the last hockey story that I wanted to talk about was the New York Islanders have been very quiet this year with a million players that they needed to re-sign, and then Lou Lamoriello decided, fuck it, August 31st is the day where we release that we signed everybody, and that's what they did. So the New York Islanders announced that they re-signed, I think it was like 5 players, and they
Five players,
announced
because
them all at
one of
once.
them one of them wasn't like yet. One of them hasn't been approved yet by the NHL, but it will be because he signed.
Okay, there you go. So we have Ilya Sorokin, three
Yep.
years, $4 million per.
I think it's a
Uh,
little too much. I think it's a little too much. I think if they went 3 by 3.5, it would have been better. I just think he's only had 1 year, and you can't be giving goaltenders that much for just 1 year.
I was gonna say, I guess we'll go player by player then. So my question to you about Ilya Sorokin is he a genuinely talented goalie, or is he an average goalie who benefited from playing in front of a New York Islanders defense that is one of the best defenses in the NHL? Because I honestly don't know what to believe. Because I think that obviously it helps with the team that he's been playing in front of, but at the same time, the Islanders' defense wasn't great in the playoffs against Pittsburgh, and he had a phenomenal series against us. Now, small sample size, it was like a 6-game sample size, and I think we both agree you don't pay a guy $12 million because he had a good 6 games. But my question to you is, what's your take on him? Is he good because of the situation he plays in, or is he good because he's good?
I do genuinely think he's a good player. I don't know if he's worth 4 million yet, but I can see him becoming someone who's worth 4 million. Um, I don't know. Like right now, I agree. I think the Islanders' defense was kind of shaky against Pittsburgh and Boston, but he stepped up, and then obviously Varlamov came in and took over. But honestly, I mean, I think he'll be okay. I think he'll still do well, especially since Lamoriello brought most of the players back. So it'll be you know what? It'll be a make or break year for me on Sorokin this year, and we'll see if he's actually the real deal.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Then you have Casey Cizikas, who at the age of 30 signs a 6-year deal, $2.5 million per year. I mean, I think $2.5 million per year is decent, but at a 6-year term for a bottom six forward, what are your thoughts on the Cizikas signing?
He's been with the Islanders since 2009, since he was drafted, and I think what he wants to do is he wants to play his final days here. So after his 6th year, I can imagine him just retiring. To be honest with you, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen. But I think that it's a little bit of a long contract for Lamoriello, but hey, Cizikas isn't the worst. He's always a good person to have in your bottom six, and he is reliable when he needs to be. So I think it's a fair contract. A little long, but fair.
Yeah, no, I think the 2.5 million is definitely fair. And like you said, I think people kind of like underestimate the solid career he's built for himself. And like Islanders fans love him. And like you said, he's already been there for 12 years, his entire career. Like you said, I imagine he does want to play his entire career there. Uh, I guess yeah. For me, it's kind of weird that he just commits all the way from now. Because what if happens if injuries, if regression, if all of this. But fair enough. If you want your guy and want to commit to your guy, go for it. Anthony Beauvillier, 3 years at 4.15 million per year.
I think it's a fair. I think I think it was the best deal of the day. I think Bailey has really proven himself to be a great forward, a great playmaker, great on the power play as well. And I think that signing him up longer term is important for the Islanders. And I think they're going to have the same success they've had for the past few years, especially with under Barry Trotz. And I think Bailey is a great addition, and are bringing back Bailey obviously, and it's huge for the Islanders.
Yeah, completely agree. I think this is the best deal by far. The one that now I'm scratching my head at the most is Kyle Palmieri 4x5.
Um, You know, that's a hit or miss contract. He could be really hot for a good streak, but then get really cold for another, and then not go goal. Like he could score 5 goals in 4 games, and then score like 1 in 10. So I think if Paul Mary is able to have like 20 goals this year with like 30, like 20 assists, 20 by 20, then I think the contract's fair. He has to be able to do that, and they have to put him on the penalty kill and power play, I would assume too.
Yeah, I guess I didn't consider special teams. The fact that that probably does increase his value. I just, for me, this is a scenario of, oh, we traded like draft picks to get this guy at the trade deadline, and he had a really good playoffs. Oh, well, we have to pay him because, or else it's just a loss. So I think it is a bit too much term and a bit too much salary, but I mean, I'm definitely not questioning his ability. He's certainly an effective player, and he's shown that at his short time with the Islanders. He showed that before with the Devils, but I don't know. I just think it is a little bit too much money, especially when I consider some of the other contracts that are coming out. So rapid fire, Eeli Tolvanen, signed by the Nashville Predators, 3 years, $4.35 million total over those 3 years. So that's $1.45 million a year. I'm not going to lie to you. I think this is the best contract that's been signed this offseason. I saw Tolvanen 3 years, 4.35, and thought that it was 4.35 per year. And I was like, that's probably a fair contract. And then I found out it was 3 years, 4.35 million total. And I was like, the Nashville Predators just signed the best bargain contract I've ever seen. Like, this guy's worth $4.35 million a year, and you got him on that for 3 years total. Like, in my mind, this is such a steal. He's such a good young player, and I think he's going to have a breakout season.
Yeah, and I think Tolvanen really showed some good promise in the not only in the playoffs but in the season as well. I got a question for you. Do you know who that fifth player that was that has been unsigned had like unannounced the contract for the Islanders? You know who that is?
Oh, no, I actually don't.
Zach Parise.
Oh, really? Let me guess. I'm gonna try to guess the details on the contract. Now, in my mind, I would be comfortable signing Parise to a 1 or 2 year deal for like $1.5 million per. So I think 2 years, 3 million is what I would pay max. I'm gonna guess that the Islanders are offering him a 4 year deal at like $3 million per.
Yeah, because Zach Parise had said himself that yeah, the Islanders and him had made a deal, just the NHL hadn't approved of it yet. So whenever the NHL approves of it, Zach Parise will be an Islander. So I thought that was kind of shocking, to be honest.
Do we know the details of the contract yet or no?
No, there's absolutely nothing because the NHL hasn't approved of it, so they won't release any information.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, there's my prediction. I honestly predict 4 years at $3 million per because
I Go ahead.
someone's gonna when him and Suter hit the free agent market all those years ago. the general consensus was this is what they're worth, but someone's going to overpay. And the Minnesota came in and was like, let's fucking go. You get $12 million or $12.5 million or whatever the hell. Well, I don't think it was that much. It was like 7 point something, but it was
Yeah.
a 12-year deal. And I think that's what's happening again, where he's been bought out, he's hit free agency, and everyone was like, well, this is probably what he's worth, but someone's going to come in there. And so I feel like New York is going to come, like, especially because Lou Lamoriello loves giving long contracts to older players,
Yeah.
Cizikas and Palmieri. So my
Huh.
prediction is 4 years, $3 million per.
I agree. I think it'll be something like that. Also, the talks on Kirill Kaprizov for the Wild, it's looking like a 5 by 9. So we'll see if that ends up happening.
That's fair. That's fair. In my NHL GM mode, I gave him a 5 by 10. Just saying Minnesota.
The big reason that Kirill Kaprizov was upset was because they wanted an 8 year longer contract, but he just wants a shorter term. So he's looking hopefully for 5 years. So we'll see if that ends up playing out.
Well, they really need to sign this guy. The Minnesota Wild on Twitter have been, revealing, like they're doing a surprise announcement, and they're doing like little mini reveals, and it's like small. Zoomed in pictures of a jersey, so everyone's like it's their Winter Classic jersey because they're playing in the Winter Classic this year, and they're doing like a jersey reveal. But it's so funny because on their Twitter, it's like a close-up picture of a jersey, and it's like huge announcement coming up. Can anyone guess? And then literally every single response is, if it's not a new Kirill Kaprizov contract, I don't give a shit. Like, announce Kirill Kaprizov. Like, every single comment is just Minnesota Wild fans like, I don't care about a new jersey. Announce the Kirill Kaprizov signing. Please pay him what he wants. We need this guy on our team. And it's
Yeah.
just so funny to see.
But they're not wrong. They need that guy on the team. Like he's so important to what that team was last year for relevancy. And he's fun to watch, man. He's really fun to watch.
No, absolutely. He made the Minnesota Wild entertaining for the first time in the entire history of their franchise. And
Well,
that's
I
not
don't know.
even
Richard Park was pretty entertaining too.
eh, okay, I'll give you that.
Hmm.
But for the first time in a very, very long time, I feel like people outside of Minneapolis care about the Wild,
Yeah.
or at least tuning in to be like, oh, what are the Wild doing? Which I think is impressive. But yeah,
It's it's
there's
great.
some hockey talk.
It's crazy to think that I was watching a clip on, Ricky's first goal, and Jonathan Taves was there, and there was the Avalanche commentators, and one of them said, "That's a player that can bring a team back to relevancy." So maybe that's what Curl could do for the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's kind of already started based on what he's done in his rookie year.
Yeah, he was fantastic to watch.
Yeah, easy Calder Trophy winner. But yeah, there's some hockey talk, and now I do want to pan to some soccer talk quickly, just because there's some big stuff going on in the world of soccer, both in North America and across the pond in Europe. And we'll start in Europe, actually, because the transfer window is finally shut in what is probably the craziest transfer window we've ever seen in our lives. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how Messi moves to PSG from Barcelona, and now we have Ronaldo returning to Manchester United. But it's not even just that, it's the way in which the move happened, because he was initially in negotiations with Manchester City, who's obviously Manchester United's biggest rivals, or one of their biggest rivals. I guess if you're a Manchester United fan, I think a lot of them would argue Liverpool is a bigger rival, but one of their biggest rivals in Manchester City. And obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, Ronaldo played for Manchester United when he was really young, like 21, 22, 23 years old, before he went to Real Madrid. And basically, a bunch of Manchester United fans, former managers, former players, like Sir Alex Ferguson even, all contacting Cristiano Ronaldo and being like, no, you can't go to City. We please wait. We'll talk to Manchester United. We will make them offer you a contract. Flash forward like 2 days later, Manchester United offer him the contract, and he signs with Manchester United. And now, actually, just yesterday, he scores 2 goals for Portugal, which makes him the all-time leading scorer for international men's soccer. He's still about 150 goals shy of Christine Sinclair. Just saying, just saying. But
Hmm.
he's now scored the most goals in international soccer for men. I believe he now has 109 goals for
Uh,
Portugal, which is
111. 111.
111 because the previous record was 109.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he now has 111 goals for Portugal. Once again, Christine Sinclair is close to 300 goals for Canada. Just saying. But still, it's a tremendous achievement for Ronaldo, and he's back with his former team in Manchester. It's a huge week for Ronaldo.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of shock when he signed with United. I was shocked myself. I'm like, holy crap, where the hell did this come from? And he's going back to his roots. You know, he played there years ago, and then he went over to Europe, and now he's back. And I think, like you said, for Portugal, the most goal scorer, most goals scored for any countryman. Like, good for him. Just that he's one of the best. Him and Messi will arguably be the two greatest players of all time, which we are witnessing. And so well, it's just good to see him back out there again.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the other crazy transfer story that not enough people are talking about. So obviously PSG. For those of you who don't know, they've never won the Champions League. Also, last year they didn't even win the French league. They lost to Lille, who won the league, led by Canadian Jonathan David, scoring the goals up top. Shout out Jonathan David. And so huge disappointment from PSG. They made the finals of the Champions League finally, but they lost. And they're still wanting to win a Champions League. And they bring in Messi to do so. Obviously, they have Mbappe. And then reports came out that Mbappe wants to leave PSG and go to Real Madrid. And he has 1 year left on his contract. So, in other words, when his contract expires, he can just go sign for Real Madrid for free, and PSG won't get anything in return. But apparently, Real Madrid wanted Mbappe now, so they offered PSG 180 million euro transfer offer for Mbappe, and they basically said, "Look, you can either accept this 180 million euro offer, or you can reject it and we'll sign him for free next year when his contract expires." And PSG are so desperate to win the Champions League that they turned down 180 million euros so that they could have one more year of Mbappe so that they could try to win this season, which is ridiculous in my mind. Like, PSG are so committed to winning this year that they went and brought in Messi. They also brought in a lot of other players. They brought in Sergio Ramos. They brought in the goalie for Italy, Gianluigi Donnarumma, and they rejected 180 million euros so that they could keep Mbappe for one more season. So PSG is not fucking around this year. They are going for blood, and they want to win everything to the point where they turned down 180 million euros just to have one more year of a player.
That is a stupid amount of money that they turned down. Like 180 euros. That is ridiculous. And that honestly, it goes to show how not desperate they are, but how much they believe in this PSG squad right now. You know, and they want one more year out of Mbappe, one of the best young players of our generation, and then they have the Neymar and Messi duo as well. So, like you said, man, they're going for blood, and I really do think they have a great chance to win it.
Oh, well, I mean, without a doubt, they're one of, if not the most, like, they're one of, if not the best team in the world right now, club sides. Um, like, they're definitely favorites. It's just a matter of they only have 1 year with this current team assembled because obviously they're going to lose Mbappe in order to get this done. I just think it's also crazy because you talk about how many teams are in financial trouble. You look at like Barcelona, but it's not just Barcelona. There's so many teams because of the pandemic and because of how expensive, elite level players are these days, like $180 million for Mbappe. You know, it's crazy because with the amount of teams that are financially struggling, for Paris to be able to be like, now we don't need 180 million euros is also equally crazy to me. And I guess it shows you just how rich this team is compared to, other teams like Barcelona, for example, that, don't have billionaire, you know, owners from South. I believe the PSG owners are from Qatar. Um, but yeah, just it's ridiculous in my mind. But yeah, and then speaking of teams in trouble, I do want to ask you. The Premier League has begun, and 3 games in, Arsenal have 3 losses, 0 goals scored, and I believe it's 9 goals conceded. Um, what's going on with Arsenal, and are they going to be able to fix their problems this year? Because I
Well,
honestly don't think they are.
cannons out of firepower. That it's obviously it's a little early, but at the same time, it's not a promising start. And um, I don't know if they can't figure it out, but I don't think they will. Like it's kind of depressing to see Arsenal used to be this great club, and now they're just kind of hanging on to relevance. So I'm disappointed with their play. 0 goals and 9 conceded in 3 games. That's just unacceptable from a team that had so much promise years ago, and now look at them. They're kind of a shell of their old self.
No, absolutely. This was a team that they're the only team to ever have a undefeated season in the Premier League. In 2004, they went the 38 league games undefeated, 26 wins, 12 ties, 0 losses. They're the only team to do that. And then you flash forward like 15 seasons, and now they're struggling tremendously. Um, yeah, it's it's weird because the thing with these teams, right, is the top teams are never going to be relegated or never going to actually finish bottom. Like people talking about this Arsenal team, I was just wanted to check to make sure I was right. It is 3 goals, 3 games, 0 goals for, 9 goals against. I wasn't 100% sure on that, but no, that is true. They are last place right now. Look, are they going to finish last place? No. Are they not going to win a game? Yeah, of course they're going to win games. Of course they're going to score goals. They're not going to finish bottom 3 and get relegated. But as you mentioned, this is a team that is considered to be in the top 6 of the elite teams in England, and this is a team that shouldn't be finishing anywhere near outside of the top 8, 9, 10. So for the fact that I think this season they'll probably finish outside of the top 10, that's just a dramatic fall from grace, and it's something that you never see with one of these big teams. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of what changes they make and what the long-term repercussions are, because there are players that are already wanting to leave Arsenal, and I think it's going to be hard for them to attract high-level players in the future, because who's going to want to come to them when you've seen this? Everyone's very publicly seeing the struggles that they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. No one's gonna want to come to a team that just keeps losing, right? If you're an agent, if you're a free agent, or if you just want to get traded, you're not gonna look through a team that's like, oh, they keep losing. I don't want to go to that team. They just keep losing. So
Exactly. Yeah.
we'll have to see what happens. Like I wouldn't want to go to a team that keeps losing.
No, definitely not. Especially when there are other options in England, other options outside of England that seem a lot more exciting and like a lot better options right now. So now switching over to soccer stories more close to home, and it's a huge day in North American soccer because World Cup qualifiers, the final stage World Cup qualifiers start today. At today's day of recording, September 2nd, the Canadian men's national team and the U.S. men's national team both start their final stage of World Cup qualifying. Canada plays Honduras today. USA plays El Salvador today. Then the two teams face each other. Canada faces the U.S. in Nashville. I believe the game is being played on September the 5th. And then on September the 8th, Canada plays El Salvador. I'm not sure. I can't remember off the top of my head who the United States play on September the 8th, but they play again on the 8th as well. It's the first 3 games of 14 in this World Cup qualifying stage. I am so excited. I know you are too. I'm going to the game tonight. Me and you are both going together to the game on Tuesday. And it's just a very exciting time to be a fan of both the United States and the Canadian men's teams. They're both looking really good, and they're both looking like they have the talent to be able to qualify for the World Cup. So yeah, Jacob, how excited are you for the World Cup qualifying cycle?
It's so exciting to watch, especially with Canadian soccer with so much promise this year. Like everything about, the soccer team has been extremely promising and it's been really fun to watch for sure. And you're right, I'm gonna be pumped. You and I are going to the game on Wednesday next week. Well, Salvador is visiting at BMO, so I can't. I'm like through the roof excited about it. So I can't even. It's just it's fun to watch. Soccer has been fun to watch for Canadians in recent years, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and I think the other huge thing is well, the return of crowds. Basically, there haven't been many sporting events that have returned to Canada. The Blue Jays have been playing in front of a crowd, which is good to see. But outside of that, there really hasn't been too much more. The CFL's just recently returned, and they've had some fans. But yeah, this is the first sporting event that I will be going to since before the pandemic. Me and you went to a couple of Leafs games like a month before everything shut down back in
Yeah,
February
not
of
even.
2020.
It was like 2 weeks before everything shut down.
Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, this is going to be my first sporting event back since March of 2020. It's the first time I've watched the Canadian men's team play since October of 2019 when me and you were at that game. We saw them beat the U.S. in the Nations League. So it's exciting because there's so much promise surrounding this team, but it's also exciting because we're able to watch soccer again at BMO Field in with fans in the crowd, and that on its own is just going to be super exciting. And just the fact that this Canadian team is extremely talented and has a lot of promise is just even more. It's the cherry on top of everything else.
Yeah, I've been to a Jays game recently, so I've been to some sporting events since we came back, but it's gonna be fun, man. It's gonna be a great atmosphere at BMO Field in Canada to take on El Salvador to get qualified for the World Cup. I'm excited, bro. I'm really stoked to be honest with you.
Yeah, so that's why I definitely wanted to mention that, especially because we will be watching those games live in person, and so we'll do some score predictions. So tonight's games: Canada versus Honduras and USA versus El Salvador. Your score predictions for those?
I believe Canada will win 3, maybe 4-1, and USA I think will destroy them 5-0.
Bold, bold. I think Honduras honestly has given Canada a lot of trouble over the years, so I'm gonna go 2-1 Canada. Um, and then, yeah, I think the U.S. really should be beating El Salvador quite comfortably.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 3-0 USA. And then we have Canada versus USA on September the 5th in Nashville. Your predictions there?
Oh, I'm gonna go 2-1 Canada, and I think it's gonna be like a last minute goal. And I'm calling it. Alfonso Davies is gonna score.
There you go. You love to see it. I'm gonna, uh, as much as I have faith in the team, and I really do, I'm gonna say, oh, I do. I want to say 1-1. I want to say 1-1. Um, my heart is telling me 1-1. My brain is telling me 2-1 USA. So I'll say 1-1 because you got to back your team. And then the Wednesday games are Canada versus El Salvador at BMO, and the U.S. on the road in Honduras to play Honduras the same day. Some score predictions there.
I'd actually like to hear what your predictions are first before I say mine.
Yeah, so I have Canada beating El Salvador at home 3-0. I think that they should be able to win that game comfortably. Now, away games are the most important part of this World Cup qualifying cycle. You have to win your games at home, and then if you can win games away, especially in some of these countries, like honestly, obviously Mexico away is going to be the toughest game in these qualifiers, but I think after that, Honduras is probably the toughest place to play away
Yeah.
in CONCACAF. I think it's tougher than Costa Rica away, tougher than Panama away, tougher than Jamaica away. I really do think that that Honduras away is the toughest fixture. And maybe, once again, this is coming from a Canadian fan who's seen us go into Honduras in big games and get absolutely obliterated. I don't want to bring up, bad karma from the past, but for those of you who have been following the Canadian men's national team for a long time, you'll know that in the 2014 World Cup cycle, we needed just a tie, a draw against Honduras in Honduras to move on to the last stage, and we lost 8-1.
Yeah, not good.
Obviously, this Canadian team is way better. This American team is very talented. But this is the American team who in 2018 just needed to tie, I believe it was Trinidad and Tobago, in Trinidad and Tobago to qualify for the World Cup. They lost and they didn't qualify. So these away games are trickier than you think. The U.S. should realistically be beating Honduras even in Honduras. I think it's going to finish in a 1-1 tie. I really do, because it's such a hard fixture to win. Away to Honduras, it's a lot tougher than people think it is. It's a lot tougher than people think it is.
I actually agree with both of your statements here. I think Canada, well, obviously Canada, I think will easily beat El Salvador, and then yeah, playing and you talk about going to different places and having to play in their home stadiums. Like think of the America Canada game in Nashville, Tennessee. Like there's gonna be a full house of American fans, so that's gonna be tough to play. And like you said, Honduras is hard to play. 8-1 in 2014, not good for Canada at all. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. To be honest, I think that Canada will really be put to the test this World Cup qualifying, and I think they'll stand up to it, and I think they'll pass with flying colors.
Yeah, and obviously these scoring predictions for me, I think they are really dependent because when you play, they have to play games on September 2nd, September 5th, and September 8th. You're going to have to rotate your team. You're going to have to play stronger players, weaker players, etc. You have to figure out what to prioritize. So I'm actually going to change one result. I think USA will beat Canada 2-1 in Nashville. Here's why. I think that Canada should really focus on the 2 games at home. Because realistically, our biggest competition is Honduras and Jamaica and Costa Rica. I really think those 3 teams are our biggest threat. We aren't competing with the U.S. and Mexico. There are 3 automatic spots. We don't care if USA and Mexico finish first and second. We just want third. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we're not competing technically, even though obviously we're competing with all of the teams. We're not technically competing with the U.S. And you have to believe that Honduras will lose in the United States, and Jamaica will lose in the United States, and Costa Rica will lose in the United States. So Canada needs to prioritize winning both of their games at home. And I think that the U.S. will kind of do the same thing. I think that the U.S. should really prioritize beating Canada at home. Because they should be able to beat El Salvador even with a rotated team. And then I think they play their strongest possible team against Canada at home because that's a game they need to win. Now here's where this is what I mean, where these are the decisions that coaches have to make. Because obviously 3 days later, the U.S. has to travel to Honduras. If they decide to rest some players for the Honduras game and play a weaker team against Canada, that's where I think Canada could surprise them. I think that in order for the U.S. to win that game, if the U.S. plays their strongest team against Canada at home, they should win. If the U.S. decides to rest some of those players for the Honduras game, thinking that they'll still be able to win, I think that could come back to bite them. I really do. And same thing with Canada. If Canada rests some players tonight against Honduras, thinking about the American game, that could come back and bite us. We need to play our best possible team tonight against Honduras and focus on tonight's result. And so that's what That's why my predictions are kind of based on those assumptions. But it comes down to coaching. And I mean, I do trust John Herdman as the coach of Canada. It's going to be really interesting, though, to see which players are playing, which players are rested. You look at substitutions, if Canada's up big tonight, maybe sub off Alphonso Davies with 15, 20 minutes to spare and give him some rest. You know what I mean? I think that's going to be a huge factor with the qualifying rounds this year because it's not 2 games every international window, it's 3 games. And playing 3 games in a 6, 7 day span is a lot. You aren't going to be able to rely on one player playing 90 minutes every 3 days. That's not sustainable.
Yeah, like it's 100% not sustainable. Like you said, bring out Alfonso Davies 20 minutes ago if you guys are either going to win the game or either going to lose the game. That way he can rest for the next game because there's a lot of games to be played in the amount of like a little bit of time, which is ridiculous. And unfortunately, like if Canada doesn't, I agree. I believe it is going to be coaching. If Canada isn't able to outcoach America, then they're going to lose. That's that's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, like I said, Canada's priority is just finish third. If Mexico and the US finish 1-2, that's fine. As long as you're third, you're still going to the World Cup. Doesn't matter if you go to the World Cup qualifying in first, second, or third, you're still going to the World Cup. And
Honestly, I think that Canada will finish second. I think
wow.
Canada has a better chance over in Honduras and Mexico than US does. I think they'll go in thinking, oh, we got this. There's no problem. Well, Canada's going to go in there and be like, okay, we're the underdog here. We're going to play as good as we can. I think America's going to be a little too arrogant, to be honest.
You see, I would normally agree, but I feel like because America had that approach 4 years ago and didn't qualify, I think that they're going to also sort of take shit a lot more seriously this time because they didn't qualify in 2018. And I think that they're going to be on the same approach that Canada is, which is we didn't qualify for the last World Cup. We're taking every game seriously. We're going in and we're winning these games. Now, granted, maybe they'll still finish third and Canada will finish second, but like I said, I'm not concerned about what our placement is as long as we're somewhere in the top 3 because that means we're going to the World Cup, and that's all I care about.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to see Canada in I believe it's Qatar. Is
Yeah,
that where they're playing?
Qatar at the next World Cup, yes.
Well, and then once you get there, all you got to do is go game by game. You don't have to worry about qualifying because you're there.
Absolutely. And it's just the experience, right? Because the 2026 World Cup is going to be in Canada, USA, and Mexico. So getting to the 2022 World Cup and giving your players that experience of playing in a World Cup is going to be huge for the next cycle and everything beyond that. Plus, obviously, when you're a country that's only been to one World Cup in 1986, which is a very long time ago, you just want to get there. You just want to get
Yeah,
there.
you just want to be able to say we made the World Cup because it's the biggest soccer tournament in the world. So, um, it'll be interesting to see what happens for Canada.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest tournament in the world for any sport. Now, wrapping up, I do have one football story, and I know the season's starting up soon, so I think next podcast episode might be an NFL season preview. Um, just because we haven't talked a lot about the NFL, and it is returning very soon. But I do want to get your opinion on one big move, whether it was surprising or expected, depends on who you talk to. But Cam Newton is cut. Mac Jones is named the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, I would have kept Cam Newton, just put him as like a linebacker. um, that's you know what? When that came out, I wasn't surprised. Cam Newton is not the guy he used to be in Carolina years ago. I'm sure someone will pick him up because he still is a decent quarterback. But Belichick is rolling with Mac Jones, and you and I have seen Bill Belichick transform quarterbacks no one thinks anything of and turn them into Super Bowl champions. I.e., Tom Brady went 16th or something or 17th, whatever. I don't even know. He wasn't first in the draft. But my whole point is like Belichick's development on players has been outstanding, arguably the best I've ever seen. So I think the Patriots know they got to rebuild a little bit, and they're going to rebuild around Mac Jones, and I think they're going to be able. It doesn't help that Stephon Gilmore's out for 6 weeks. Um, but it will help when he gets back, and I think they'll be relevant again in maybe 4 or 5 years if he's able to develop the same way Brady was able to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that this move was pretty much to be expected. I think that, when you draft a quarterback like this and when you're at this phase that the Patriots are in, which is in a building mode, um, you want to give your young guy experience in game time. And obviously, you're in a situation with Cam Newton. Cam Newton doesn't want to be a backup quarterback,
No.
right? So the option was you either start Cam Newton and have Mac Jones learn behind him but not play, or you give Mac Jones the starting job right away as a rookie and you let Cam Newton find a job elsewhere. And like you said, he's not the same player he was in Carolina, but there are teams that are in need of a quarterback, and I mean, it would be a travesty if Cam Newton didn't play anywhere this year. But you got to think that a team is gonna pick him up, just because he's still a talented quarterback, and I think he's honestly an upgrade for a couple of teams right now that are maybe a little weak on the quarterback side of things, and I'd expect him to get a job somewhere. And so I think, yeah, like you said, it makes a lot of sense. The Patriots want to develop their quarterback and they want to continue to grow. And like you said, if the Patriots are going to have success, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, it's going to be with Mac Jones behind center. So you might as well start that building process from now. Why delay it a year? Just hand him the reins and see what he can do.
Yeah, I think that might be a problem though, because look what happened with Burrow in his first year. He got absolutely crushed and was injured. So that's a high risk, high reward. So we'll have to see if Belichick knows what he's doing again.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the Patriots have a better offensive line. They'll be able to protect him. Like I don't, the Bengals situation is a bit different, but I do get what you mean. Obviously, you don't want to throw him to the wolves and just have him not be prepared and have him set up to fail. That's absolutely true. But I think you mentioned it. Belichick's a great coach. He knows what he's doing development wise. Typically, the Patriots organization have just always, for whatever reason, just been able to create success stories out of everyone that they touch. It seems like so. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, though, you're absolutely right. It does depend on the type of situation that they get him, but I think they'll be able to do a good job, protecting him and making sure that he's developing well in his rookie season.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to kind of wrap it up. It's going to be a fun NFL season with lots of new faces and lots of new places, and I'm excited to see Buffalo win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there you go. You heard it here first. And yeah, I think next podcast, we'll probably do a wrap up of all the World Cup qualifying games, just because we have been pushing the World Cup qualifiers pretty hard here on this podcast. But yeah, expect next episode to be very football heavy, doing some NFL predictions, talking about what teams we like to win the division, what teams we like to win the Super Bowl, what we think about some of the rookie quarterbacks who we think's gonna be an impact player this year for a couple of the top teams in the league. But until then, we thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. As always, we appreciate all the support and for you taking the time to listen to another episode. And we will see you guys next week.